Welcome, everyone. Once again, we are meeting together. So, let me start with something very slightly uncomfortable, right? So, we keep hearing the energy transition is accelerating, but also we need record investments, ambitious net zero targets. Everything is online, everything is in the news. But on the ground, projects are delaying, capital is stuck, infrastructure is not ready. So, the real question is, are we transitioning? And I think we have now entered a new phase, the phase where not the decade of ambitions, but the decade of delivery. And let's frame it properly. Globally, over 1 trillion is being invested annually in clean energy, and yet 4 trillion per year until 2030 is needed to stay on track. At the same time, many projects like 5, 10 years they needed just because of approvals. Grid connections are delayed. Capital is not flowing where it is needed the most. But let's unpack everything together. And that is the reason. Welcome everyone to Let's Talk Energy with Saikat, sponsored by One Climate Club under the association of YOUNGO Energy Working Group, the youth constituency within UNFCCC, which is United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. Right now, we are on a way of taking every energy talks, every energy discussion into a deliverable position, right? And when we talk about deliveries, we need people who are on the ground actually making some kind of changes, right? And to unpack this gap between ambition and execution, I am joined by someone working in the intersection of energy transition, finance, global implementation, which is Nehmat Kaur, Director for Under Two Coalition, and she's working with the climate group as well and the subnational government climate policies. So I welcome Nehmat here with us in the session.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Saikat, and happy to be here. Look forward to getting into the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Nehmat. Also, welcome to the show. Welcome to the network. And of course, you are there since long time talking about energy, working with energy. And recently, you highlighted that this is the decade where we talk less and do more, right? So, because the reality of renewable cost have fallen drastically, technologies are mature, capital exists globally, and yet delivery is lagging. So, why not to start the session with a warm introduction of yourself, like what you want to tell us about? And we know your work. We really want to know you closely more. And what do you think about exactly, which is, the delivery is lagging going on?
Sure. I first, before I introduce myself, I have to apologize to your listeners because even though it sounds like I have a cold, I don't. I'm just the weather in London, where I'm based, is really warm and dry, and that is also causing a lot of pollen to be in the air. So I'm suffering from hay fever. So if I sneeze or if I use my tissue, that's what's happening. But like I said, like you said, I work at the climate group and I direct the work of the Under Two Coalition. The
Hmm.
Under Two Coalition is actually part of another UNFCCC constituency called LGMA, the
Hmm.
Local Government and Municipal Authority constituency. So we're very familiar with YOUNGO and Bingo and all the other constituencies that work with UNFCCC. And this network is essentially nearly 200 governments spread across 36 countries
Hmm.
operating with sort of climate action at the core of their leadership, and sort of really driving their economies and net zero action together.
Hmm.
And as part of the coalition, we kind of work with them to, sort of work with them to set the right level of ambition. What are, then work with them on action. What are the policies or what are the projects that they need to put in place in order to deliver on that ambition? We also work on advocacy. So we also recognize that subnational governments don't really operate in a vacuum. They
Hmm.
operate in an ecosystem with other governments, with businesses, with the UN multilateral system. And we assess whether the UN multilateral system is doing what it needs to do in order to enable delivery at the subnational level. So we also do a lot of advocacy. And then we also work with data to pull out analysis of where are there gaps in action, and whether we can hold ourselves to account as a coalition. Because unless you're a credible actor in the net zero transition, sort of your credibility comes from the fact that you can demonstrate progress. So that's what we do. And when I say subnational governments, I'm really talking about one level of government below the national government.
Mm-hmm.
So, for those of our listeners who are in India, I'm talking about our states. In Japan, I'm talking about the prefectures. In Australia, I'm talking about states and territories. In Brazil, I'm talking about states. In Spain, I'm talking about regions. They all look and sound different, but they're
Mm-hmm.
essentially the same thing.
Same.
They are these large levels of government, one below the national government, really driving climate implementation forward. Our network represents 50% of global GDP. We
Hmm.
have really large states and regions from across the world in this network, really pushing the needle, driving the climate action forward. As to your first question about lagging, I think there is another way to think about it.
Okay.
Instead of thinking about it as lagging, the
Mm-hmm.
question that comes to my mind is action taking place at the pace and scale at which it should be? The answer is no. Because if you think about it as compared to 10 years ago, there is a lot more renewables investment now. There is a lot more renewable projects actually coming online now. So, for it to be lagging, there has to be a benchmark. But if the benchmark is 10 years ago, there's actually quite a bit of clean energy deployment going on at the moment. So I would say, I would recharacterize your question to say, no, we're not necessarily lagging, but should we be faster? Yes. Should we be, should the scale of transition be greater? Absolutely. So I would recharacterize and reframe that narrative to say, are we delivering the transition at the scale and pace at which it is required? Perhaps
Mm-hmm.
not. Yeah.
It's quite interesting that you said that right from the data as well, how it has been collected. And it's not just the lagging, it's how it changes at the base level, this fundamental level. And we always talk about the global changes, but we generally don't understand how the changes has to be done in stakeholder level, which is subnational, regional level as well.
Mhm.
Because we don't understand the policies on the ground, it is very tough to understand how it should be fit in into global policy levels. We talk about NDCs, but we don't talk about the short-term goals and the LTADs which the governments and all the national have. So I think if we can change those, the straight it can directly fit into the NDCs as well. So I think yeah, you actually like put forward the exact positioning what we are talking about. But you have been engaging in climate weeks in Yasu, where
Mhm.
the focus is clearly shifting from ambition to implementation across discussion where the finance solution, the subnational actions, multi-level government. Right now, let me start here. That are we finally moving from talking about transitioning to actually figuring out what exactly has to be delivered?
I think so. And I think if you think about how these climate weeks, like the one that I attended in Yosu last week and the one that will take place in Baku in October before COP, all of these climate weeks are structured quite intentionally, I would say. If you had the chance to listen to some of the things that I spoke about in Yosu, you would have recognized that they were all called implementation labs and investment labs. And the framing is definitely moving further from what is the right target to set to actually how do we get down to brass tacks? How do we, you know, work together, collaborate, partner, reduce the gaps that exist so that we can actually implement projects on the ground. And it's not just projects. Sometimes implementation on the ground means thinking about a pathway for your agricultural sector or thinking about a pathway for decarbonization of your building sector. So, the step one is to take a look at your economy overall. Your economy has different sectors. It has the building sector, it has the agricultural sector, it has the industry sector, it has the energy sector. Each sector has its own emissions trajectory. You have to know how your emissions are kind of mapped out between now and 2050. And that pathway will give you a sense of how that pathway actually needs to be taken to net zero. So, whether it's your power sector or your building sector,
Mm-hmm.
unless you know what is the status today, you will not know what it is that you need to change. So, implementation looks different in different
Mm-hmm.
places. Some places are really advanced. As you can imagine, there are states and regions in the world who started working on net zero, carbon neutrality, sort of economy wide emission reduction a long time ago. And that there are others who are developing as well as reducing their emissions now. And I think what we are also seeing is that the implementation case and the economic case are getting closer together.
Mm-hmm.
So the narrative that we see and the evidence that we see actually says that forget about climate action for a second. If you truly want your economy to grow, for you to trade competitively in the world, for you to have good jobs, good health, provide good socioeconomic conditions for your communities, and invest in climate resilience as well, you should be looking at emission reduction because it will support your economy. There is a business case for climate action. So yeah, we're looking at that implementation taking place for sure, and I almost feel like there is a bit of a fatigue to talk
Mm-hmm.
about targets
Yeah, yeah.
and more to there is more intention to work together to understand how to implement practical action on the ground. Yeah.
Well, because as you say, it's crucial that we have to also see the socio-economic part. It's not just a transition; it should be a
Hmm.
justified transition,
Yeah.
and the economic aspect of every countries and global level, regional level are not the same. Definitely for sure.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
Most of the time when we get the data shows any regression analysis when we do it. Within few years, we will go with the trajectory of maybe like moving towards net zero. But actual level, when we see that what are the policies are right now, that is not taking us anywhere. So I think we have to understand how those countries are working, and maybe might be as you said that some of the countries are actually like started working long time back, but still they have some kind of gap, like reaching to the net zero.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And mostly where the rubber is meeting the road is the hard to abate sectors.
Yeah.
So the hard to abate sectors are essentially, if I count, there's steel, there's concrete, there's plastics, there's fertilizer, some of the really where technology solutions are still not commercially viable,
Hmm.
those are the sectors where we are seeing kind of real um, reticence or
Hmm.
real reluctance. And that's why, sort of at Climate Group, we also think that the market is all powerful. And if you have demand, then there will be supply. And we run big demand side campaigns like Steel Zero to consolidate that there is demand for low carbon steel, for green steel out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the suppliers actually need to get in line and provide that to the market. Yeah.
That's true. So the hard to abate sector is also giving us a hard time in terms of the carbon leakages. There is some kind of taxes that we also need, like the CBAM which is coming, and other mechanism that we always try to locate how exactly the offshore emissions can be recorded. It shouldn't be dual recorded, but at least we should record how what is going on. And when we talk about the core tradition right now, we know that capital exists, projects don't scale, but where exactly the real bottleneck, according to you? Is it the lack of capacity, lack of capitals, or lack of system to be deployed, which is not effective till now?
I would say it is. Well, capacity for sure, but
Hmm.
I think we need to go a step further in understanding whose capacity we are talking about.
True.
So, an economy, a country, is not a black box. If you open up the country further, there's the national government, which sets the long term policy vision. Back
Hmm.
in 2010, India said, we're going to go hard on solar and wind. Sort of then, even though there were kind of government changes at the political level, the country did not step back from its long term vision. And now you have utility scale solar plants coming online in a matter of 6 months from the time that an investor gets involved in a solar project. I
Correct.
know this because after having a 40-year career, my father himself has invested in a solar plant and is now
Oh.
running a solar plant in Rajasthan. So
Hmm.
I have a little bit of my own personal experience
Hmm.
on how quickly things are coming online. But if you take a step back, you've got the national government, then you've got the state government. The state government is looking at things like permitting, looking at policy, looking at spatial planning, looking at land allocation.
Hmm.
So it's the state government that also needs capability and capacity.
True.
Then you have the investors, then you have the developers. So I feel like if we were thinking about a country from the perspective of, okay, who are the real economy actors inside this country? Is it the states, the private sector, the industry, the banks, the utilities? All of those together have to work hand in hand for your goals to be met. Therefore, we can't stop at the question of capacity. We need to think about whose capacity needs to be built up. And
Hmm.
from our experience, because subnational governments are really at the front lines of driving this implementation,
Hmm.
we think that this is the level of government where capability, capacity should be built up. The second piece is about capital.
Correct.
So, capital again, I think we need to think about what kind of capital we're really talking about. It
Hmm.
is it's not enough to say that there is capital out there in the world, which there is, by the way, but where are the projects that are bankable? Where is the pipeline that is ready for final investment decisions? And therefore, coming back to the capacity question, whose capacity do we need to build so that there is a steady stream of bankable projects
Hmm.
actually available to be able to access that capital. So, and capital also doesn't look the same, right? You've got
Hmm.
development finance, you've got
Correct.
private capital, you've got equity, you've got debt. And in order to understand the world of financial transactions, financial markets, again, I think subnational governments need a lot of capacity building to
Hmm.
be able to sit across the table from an investor or a banker or a private equity player or a pension fund and
Hmm.
say, these are the projects that we want money for. How do we get to a final investment decision? The investor is not going to tell you, and you
Definitely.
have to have a project that's ready to be pitched to
Mhm.
an investor. Yeah, so I think there's nuance, but I completely agree with you that we need to do a little bit of all of the above and
Mhm.
understand how the whole market and system works. Yeah.
No, in fact, it is quite interesting that you brought the commodity, the utility, and also the local government as well. Um, I remember still that when I was in India, I was working with the central government, one of the Navratna. You understand what is Navratna company? So
Yes.
working with one of the electrification Navratna company,
Hmm.
and at that time, I think I'm talking about in 2017 or 16-ish. Yeah,
Hmm.
17-ish, where the new project about rooftop solars for only the government building introduced. So at that time, we have been given as a feasibility analysis of that project, whether
Mm,
it is feasible or not. Because see, the problem is not in India. You know that it's not the problem about connectivity. It's about how we can connect with the grids. The grids are old fashioned. We need smart metering, you know, and also like those grids are not connected with each other as well. It's not interconnected. It's not decentralized. So that was the issue at that time. And also when we talk about solars, there's a lot of back maintenance going on just because in India it's like a lot of pollutions all the time. We have to further go for like maintenance. How much we'll get? Is it 1 kilowatt hour, 2 kilowatt hour? The investment that will do, will it bring upon a return of investment within few years? Otherwise, the government takes investments as well from others, from the markets. So whether they will give it back or not. So during that entire phase of planning, we got to know that it's not just involvement of the government, it's involvement
Hmm.
of entire community stakeholders and also the investors who wants to give. Plus, if someone wants to bring upon any some kind of like tariff system, if the government will provide the electricity to the grids, how the tariff will work? Is it like they will give certain kind of percentage as a discount, or there will be some kind of surcharge they can minimize at the end of the day, or they can sell it to the grids as well? So those are literally a lot of factors that as you said, that it's not just on the top that we have to see. We have to see from where it has to fit in. So exactly the point that you share, that the project needs to be decomplexify according to me, and a work breakdown structure has to be understand like from where we have to get it. It depends. Everything depends on the timeline of the project as well.
Absolutely. And I think one point that you picked up on that I really want to stress is the importance of modernizing your electrical
Mhm.
infrastructure. So the grid is really important to modernize. I think if the economy is going to electrify, it's not just power, right? Sharkat, I think India is investing very heavily in EVs. They're looking at, sort of energy efficiency. They're looking at net metering and rooftop solar being a successful part of the Indian power system. I
Mhm.
think, but as you very rightly said, is the economy ready for clean electrification? And I'm not just talking about India, I'm talking about around the world,
Correct.
and more so in Europe and the United States, where the grids have been around for so long that modernization is a much bigger task or
Very.
mandate in economies that are already quite advanced. So I think that, sort of, if we're thinking about a future that's going to be powered by renewables,
Mhm.
there needs to be a lot of preparation and investment done in readiness,
Mm.
electrification readiness of a country. So, one of the things that we have recognized is that, as everything else, subnational governments, states, and regions play a huge role in managing local and regional power systems.
Mhm.
Think about South Australia. In Australia, they are now producing 5 times the amount of renewables. They want to invest in producing 5 times the amount of renewables that they would actually need because they want to export renewables outside of the state. But for all of that to actually work, your grid needs to be ready. You need to have storage that's commercially viable. You need to think about, sort of how your infrastructure is going to work, how are EVs going to plug in at 1,000
Correct.
different points in the
Mhm.
city.
Mhm.
So my question is, are we electrification ready? And I think the answer is no. And where do we need to be electrification ready is actually at the subnational level. So, for example, we at the Climate Group are creating a subnational clean electrification task force for subnational governments, states, and regions to work together and really think about what are the practical ways in which they can be ready for the kind of deployment of renewables at the level at which it is envisaged at the
Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
So, if you want your economies that are 90% renewable powered, you will
Mhm.
need to have clean electrification infrastructure in place
Correct.
in order to do that. Yeah.
No, that's true. Just because, as you said, right now, in fact, as we are experiencing, I can say, the global shift towards a geopolitical situation, energy
Hmm.
security is in question. Just because, as someone said, that it's not about the question of market; it's about the question of infrastructure, how the infrastructure is actually located, right?
Hmm.
And just about 21 miles of State of Hormuz, it's making a vast difference in terms of economy, in terms of workforce, in terms of how we are looking towards our entire ecosystem, or you can say the energy nexus, right?
Hmm.
So when we talk about the multi-level coordinations, multi-level government, um, do you think that aligning global commodities, commitments, national policies, local implementation without showing everything down to this situation that okay might be in the future, if we have a lot of renewables but there is a situation that the infrastructure is not ready, we can go back to again to fossil fuel dependency, and then of course the market will experience a huge amount of fluctuation in tariffs, in cost. But most important, we know that more than 700 million people are right now deprived of electricity as well. So we are talking about implementation, scale up, but still a section of the world don't have the electricity till now. So how to
Absolutely.
implement those? Like how to actually plan keeping everything balanced?
Absolutely. And I'll start where you finished, which
Mm,
is if you think about energy access, solar is the cheapest electricity in history.
mm,
So providing cheap electricity to people is prior number one.
mhm,
Second, solar has the ability to be distributed. It has the ability to be decentralized. It can be put on rooftops. You can have mini grids. You can have captive solar power just for an industrial cluster. And you can have utility scale solar for the grid as well. So if you really think about how the energy access problem should be solved,
mhm,
really, there is no better answer than renewables. However, what you've also hit on is that crises like the current crisis going on in the Strait of Hormuz, there is no short term fix to that crisis. Of course, we need to make sure that people are not suffering at the moment.
mhm,
But this is really a good opportunity for all of us as a global community to really think about how our energy systems are really reliant on a few, sort of specific supply conditions. And in the advent of any supply shocks, the whole world is held hostage to those supply shocks. So, really, it's about diversifying, it's about energy security, it's about making sure that your electricity is homegrown, it's secure, and it's local. And again, clean power gives you a chance to do that. And that's why I think even though in the short term, sort of the world is facing an unfortunate crisis, I think in the long term, this is an opportunity to really think about what is the future of the energy mix for countries that are growing, that are
mhm.
powering. And, sort of we're looking at a lot of good growth that is being powered by renewables in the Asia Pacific context. Where we are seeing growth actually slow down is some of the Western economies, and
Yeah.
really it's thinking about how those economies are going to kickstart again using clean electricity. I mean, last year the UK had a few spots where it was powering its country mostly using renewables, and we
Mhm.
need to make that a lot more regular and a lot more consistent going forward. Yeah.
No, definitely. Like I still remember in last year, a few wind farms were closed down just because of excess generation, and they don't have a proper manner to just store those electricity as well. You started a conversation right now when you ended with having access of electricity, but I think right
Hmm.
now we also have to focus about batteries. Like the storage, because
Absolutely.
we are generating a lot of electricity. We need connectivity, like national collective connectivity with other nations, where we can just send the excess of electricities, or maybe we can actually save them as like storage, battery storage. Next planning would be not just we are talking about grid level, but also in talking about like infrastructure level, where we can store them, we can use them. AI, which is coming, the data centers. Recently, I was learning about the AI data center. It's called the heat island phenomena, where
Yeah.
all the data center, where the data centers are, they're creating a heat island as well.
Hmm.
It's not just the electricity they need; it's the water, like
Cooling,
desalination of water.
for sure.
So you know, so I can see a lot of usage of energy. I can see the infrastructure is going, but I can also see the demand of energy is also increasing day by day. So we are finding the solution, but the solution is actually getting to more um, demand, like demanding of energy. The supply is getting same. It's not getting higher just because the demand is also like increasing at the same time. So what do you think in the future would happen? Will the electricity demand will grow more, or we are thinking about more innovations into the market, and the intensity, the energy intensity that we are talking about can grow down?
I think we have to do both. I mean, we also the climate group runs something called the Smart Energy Coalition,
Mhm,
which is really about energy efficiency. I mean, energy saved is the most inexpensive kind of energy, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
you also have really important and strong work going on with electrifying heating and cooling systems, but also making heating and cooling extremely energy efficient. I think also from an adaptation perspective
Yes.
and a resilience perspective, providing energy efficient space cooling can
Mhm.
be the matter between saving lives and a lot of public mortality, as we have seen in some extreme heat waves across the world, right?
Mhm,
But I was in a conversation earlier this week at an event, and I heard something really interesting where it said that in Asia Pacific,
mhm.
the energy transition is energy addition. There is a
Hmm.
lot of development and economic growth happening in Asia Pacific still. And at this point, we're not in a stage where we're getting rid of old systems and putting in new systems. It's not a transition. All the energy that we're talking about is actually additional to the existing
Additional.
sources of energy. So, for sure, there is a lot of growth that's taking place. There's a lot of good growth that's taking place. And, economic prosperity should certainly not be compromised on. So, but really, the question is how you power that growth using clean electricity, clean energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and also as you saying additional.
Yeah.
As a youth constituency, we always look ahead that how the youth can be involved into from the very first level, not just towards looking that okay we want to be there, but we want to be in the change, like during the change. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm coming towards the workforce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
the workforce, a recent global wind Council provided a report, and they
Mm-hmm.
said only in offshore wind farms and onshore wind farms, the technician, I'm not talking about the engineers, I'm just talking about the technicians and engineers all
Mm-hmm.
together. The need is 628,000 within
Mm-hmm.
2030.
Mm-hmm.
And right now youths and other newcomers, I will say, like the newbies who wants to be in the sector, they want to be inside the change, they can provide some kind of technicalities. They're finding it difficult to get a job inside as well. And we are talking about there are workforce requirement, there are requirement in technology upgradations, but where is the lag in the middle? Like, is it the market that the entire workforce is not getting, or is the skills? Because green skills is a myth according to me as well, because you don't know exactly what the green skill is. Because if you're working in different sector, you are not working for the product, you are working for the production, or in the process of the product. So you
Mm-hmm.
will be working in the same project management, you will be working in the same supply chain management, anything. The question that I'm asking is from a long term experience that I got from our past experience with my members. We have like more than 20,000 members working together, and we have the
Mm-hmm.
similar questions like what exactly we have to learn, what are the gaps that we have to fulfill to be inside the sector.
So I'm not an expert on jobs and perhaps labor economics, but I can
Mhm.
definitely say that the point that you're making about demand for green jobs at 628,000 in the wind sector till 2030 alone. I was involved in doing, I think, India's first analysis of how many jobs would be required by the solar
Mhm.
industry, and it was in the millions
Wow.
over sort of decades. So we're talking about big numbers here. We're talking about big workforces here.
Yes.
And what I would say is that I think again for me where it becomes really where the rubber meets the road is at the subnational level,
Mhm.
because states and regions are also kind of partnering with things like universities, with
Correct.
research institutes. They have jobs and skilling institutes. They are thinking about employment. I mean, I was in California a couple of weeks ago and I came across a really exciting initiative in California, which is called the it's called Cal Fire, and they have a climate core for young people where they're
Mhm.
basically giving people a year or 2 years of training on how to prevent and manage wildfires. And ultimately, those people are becoming
Wow.
firefighters in the state. So it's such a good kind of feedback loop of employment.
Mhm.
So I think coming back to the point that I was trying to make, and even in Yosu, I talked about this when I was speaking for the Action for Climate Empowerment ACE UN ACE
Yes.
event.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, it's that sort of subnational governments are closest to
Mhm.
their communities, to the young people as well, and they are in a position to kind of really work with young communities and youth to help create that channel between where the young people are today and where the jobs of the future will be. Another example that I'll give you is from the state of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil.
Brazil.
So Rio did a really interesting exercise where they went out to their entire youth community. It's called the Jovium program,
Mhm.
if you want to look it up. And they basically did a little bit of a survey with their youth in the state, and they basically asked their youth, "What do you value? What are the things that you value in your life?" And the youth came back and said, we value culture, we value arts, we value sports, and we value the environment. So they came up with 3 or 4 things that they value, and climate and environment, as well as sports, art, and culture, were all part of that. So what the state did was they combined two of those things. They looked at sports and football, which Brazil is very famous for, as an entry point to educate youth about how climate action needs to be conducted. So they engaged with the fans of their football clubs and created a big youth education program. So I feel like states can do so much with the powers that they have, especially because they hold policy and regulatory powers on education within their territories. So I would think that subnational governments, and we've seen countless examples in the Under 2 coalition, are the kind of key target to help bridge this gap between where the jobs exist and where the job seekers exist.
In fact, there's a really wonderful example that you said. Like right now, it just clicked into my mind. So, I right now I'm located in Edinburgh in Scotland,
Okay.
and in Scotland, there was an infrastructure which is old infrastructure of oil heating, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
do, so it has been changed by solar heating and electric heating right now. So
Mm-hmm.
government is providing a lot of tariffs and different kind of approaches people should use in long term investments and this kind of stuff, which the government is also helping them to get it. But the problem is, it's not about getting the technology inside their home. The problem is maintaining the technology, just because the number of people or number of technician you can find just dedicated to those technical, mechanical infrastructure are
Sure.
very very less,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And in that long term, as you know, that the demand and supply, if the supply is less, the demand is too high, so the price will go out. And also, like, to maintain them, they have to learn themselves, they have to invest a lot of time also to understand how this technology works. And sometimes it happens that, okay, they have to change the entire system just because something happened, and they have to also change, like, they have to go through once again from the initial level of installation to again running it up. Where the lag is if the government gives a proper attention to give a capacity building or maybe a training or skill development for those technicians. They wants to work. Like literally, if you speak with them, they will be say, yeah, I really want to work, but I don't know how to handle them. We need a proper training. And if I handle someone's boiler or someone's electrical boiler, what I'm saying, and it goes down, it will actually, like, it will come to themselves, right? Like, so they don't want to take the accountability, and they want to learn. But the problem is the gap. The government can invest in training, and the people can learn, and this is how then the economy can run as well. So
Yeah.
exactly, whatever you said, right on the point.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, again, bulk of my career was focused on India. India has a Green Skills Council,
Hmm.
and India, I mean, even with the International Solar Alliance, which is kind of headquartered out of Gurgaon in
Mm,
India.
yes.
I mean, they have a green skills and jobs program. So I
Mhm,
think again, that's at the national level, but the I feel like if you're talking about the government, really think
mhm,
about which level of government you're talking about, because I feel like the game changer is at
mm,
the devolved administration level. So for Edinburgh, I would think it's the Scottish government
yes.
that's really pushing the
Mm.
needle on the change that's required. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Like as you said, International Solar Council. I met a few people last year in COP as well. I was working with Global Renewable Alliance,
Okay.
and in I was handling the pavilion. At that time, I met few people, and we had some kind of discussion. And literally, they are doing great in terms of how the capacity should be come on. Some community level trainings as well. They're providing like in Rajasthan, so some communities
Exactly.
where
Yeah.
the women who are not going outside of the house, so they can collect together and then making solar solar cookings and this kind of stuff together.
Speaking of women, I think an amazing gender angle is the work that the Self Employed Women's Association is doing
Hmm.
across many countries, not just India, even though it's headquartered out of India, but they have
Hmm.
an amazing green jobs, Haryali kind of green households
Correct.
program
Hmm.
where they are obviously empowering women entrepreneurs to kind of invest in, sort of green businesses, clean power businesses, etc. Yeah.
That's true. So right now, I think we had amazing discussion. It's quite serious, but right now we'll go to the fun part of our
Okay.
show, right? So every guest goes through the same situation. You have to go through the same situation as well. I'm sorry
Okay.
about that, but it's kind of a rapid fire, right? It's a rapid fire round,
Mm,
and we just go through 4 or 5 topics. But
okay.
those rapid fire round will go through two aspects. One, for you, is it kind of ambitious or a reality, right? So I'll speak about two
Ambitious
things
or
or reality, correct?
reality? Okay.
Yeah. So you have to be very quick. I will
Okay.
say like 4 topics, and you have to say about those topics whether you think it's an ambitious or it's an reality, right?
Okay.
And then we will select one of the topic, and I'll go
Okay.
through why you talked about is it ambitious or is it reality, all right?
All right.
So yeah, so bear with me. First of all, net zero targets,
Reality.
climate finance,
Reality.
local implementation,
Reality.
global global coordination.
Um, ambitious.
Okay, so now we got our question right. So
The first three were easy.
hey,
Or
we,
maybe
we were
I'm biased.
trying to pull you into the hook, like okay, right now she will tell about the ambitious, yeah. So
Or
why
maybe
global
I'm
coordination?
I'm biased because because of my vantage point of working so closely with subnational
Mhm,
governments. So
mhm.
the first three were quite easy for me, but global coordination, yes, I can explain.
Please go ahead.
Okay, you want me to pick up that one?
Yes.
Okay. So I think there is a lot to be very proud of as far as global coordination is concerned.
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
the Paris Agreement has been one of the most successful international climate cooperative
Correct.
treaties on
Mhm,
climate, of course. And I think there's still a lot of commitment around the world to make sure that the Paris Agreement is something that countries really stand by. The reason I think it is still, it's getting a little bit ambitious to work on global coordination for climate is because I think the easy parts, if I may,
mhm,
cleaning up your power system,
mhm.
cleaning up your buildings. I think there's a lot happening on agriculture. All of that is some of the low hanging fruit of
Correct.
the climate transition. Where we are headed to now is the difficult part of the transition. And in this difficult part, things become more difficult to work out. So even though, I can understand why every COP feels more and more difficult, and I honestly respect kind of the countries everybody coming to the table, and not just countries, Youngo, LGMA, the constituencies coming to the table to really talk about implementation. But I understand now because we are now talking about hard to abate sectors. We're now talking about, sort of where we don't have easy answers. All of that is up on the table for discussion and negotiation, which is why I think that global coordination on things will naturally become a little bit more challenging in the coming years. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. As you said, like COP is kind of challenging, but it's very interesting to see as well, like how they brought together all the countries in one under the one roof. It's very
Yeah.
challenging as well, like bringing everyone with different perspective, different thinking, but also they're
Mm.
talking to each other. Of
Hmm.
course, it's been decades, like 3 decades. We haven't got any proper trajectory, but without those talk, I think we will be right now without any with a uncharted path as well. So yes, you're right. Global coordination is truly a fascinating thing that we are seeing.
Hmm.
But I'm very interesting rather what Nehmat does when it's a Sunday morning during the free
I
period.
walk my dog. I take my two legs and I go outside and I try to appreciate nature and I walk my dog on a Sunday morning. That's what I do.
Any favorite books of yours?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Do you want me to say a climate book or do you want me to
Any.
say a
We are
non-climate
open
book?
to
Okay.
mindsets.
So, recent favorite non-climate book, really, I love fiction.
Mhm.
There's this book because I'm a 90s child and I grew up with video games. There is a
Same here.
book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle
Wow.
Zevin, which is
Mhm.
really good. It's a very interesting story. Highly recommend
Okay.
all our listeners to read it. And then I think if I was thinking about a climate book, I would think about the first Drawdown book, which just gives you a sense. It's called Project Drawdown.
Mhm.
And in the first book, just gives you the top climate solutions that you need to know about as a citizen
Wow.
of this global community. And it tells you which solution is the most effective and which solution is perhaps not worth our time. So it really looks at a lot of good climate solutions. Yeah.
I'll definitely put those links into the caption for
Okay.
our viewer. But thank you so much for the answer. So right now we'll be
Absolutely.
going towards another round, which is called the energy transition round. But this round, you have to say one word for everything.
Okay.
Right? Um, First question: energy transition in one word.
Exciting.
Biggest gap: ambition or execution?
Execution.
Subnational government: underrated or critical?
Both.
Okay. Finance: available or inaccessible?
Both.
Future: optimistic or uncertain?
Optimistic.
That's fantastic. So I think your answer was both for two of them, but we
Hmm.
understand that whatever we discussed, it was interesting, and also like our future should be uncertain in a positive way, and finance, of course, both accessible plus non-accessible as well. So it was a lovely discussion with you, Nehmat, and I
Thank you,
I hope you
Saikat.
liked the discussion flow. I hope you
I
liked the
did.
content
I
as well.
did. Absolutely. It was a lovely conversation, and you're a great host. And I hope loads and loads of people listen to this and happy to answer any questions that any one of your listeners also might have in the future.
So thanks a lot. And let me close with this: that we don't lack ambition, we don't lack solution, we don't lack execution. Just the thing we have to scale it up, scale the execution
Hmm.
up. This is where the real transition happen. We don't won or we don't lost. Thanks a lot, Nehmat, for being here. We all are really honored to get you here in as a, one of the guests. Energy transition will be transitioning all the time, but the justified transition is when we connect with like-minded people like you. So let's roll the conversation all the time. Thanks a lot for
Absolutely.
all the viewers as well to be here. And we will meet you and see you again in the next episode of Let's Talk Energy with Saikat, sponsored by One Climate Club. and under the wing of YOUNGO Energy Working Group, which is the youth constituency of United Nations Framework for Climate Change. And thanks a lot. See you.
Thank you, Saikat.
Bye.